Bonjour, bienvenue à l'édition spéciale dans Deux chaises de métal, le podcast de lutte animé par l'Encyclopédie de lutte, moi-même, TJ Holiday. Et bonjour Marc.
Bonjour, tout un podcast aujourd'hui.
Et un invité de marque.
Il a fallu que je réanime 3 fois TJ parce qu'aujourd'hui on reçoit un Hart. Bruce fucking Hart is with us today. Yeah.
How's it going, Bruce?
Good, nice to be here, guys.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me.
No problem.
It's an honor for us.
Yeah.
he knows.
I'm looking forward to just rendering some perspective and sharing some of the memories and some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the
No problem.
Hart family and
We're all here for it.
all of that. So there's a lot of ground to cover, and hopefully we can cover it in a meaningful and compelling manner. So.
I'm not worried at all.
Et ce podcast, vous allez pouvoir l'écouter partout sur Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Balado Québec. Puis on est sponsorisé par qui, mon TJ?
Gourou, la boisson organique biologique québécoise depuis 1999, en vente partout, sauf chez Pit
Puis Yellow. Fait qu'on va aller sans hésiter avec la première question avec Bruce. TJ?
So you're in Montreal this weekend for the LeducProwrestlingacademy? Have you
Yeah,
ever
I
been to
was
Montreal
invited.
before?
Yeah, I think we did a gig back in the Heart Attack Tour days or something. But Owen and Brett and Anvil and I or something like that. But to a lot of degrees, feel very familiar with Montreal just because I had so many French Canadian wrestlers out in Stampede back in the day, and I grew up with all these guys who, some legendary names like the Vachons and Maurice Lapointe and Tarzan Tourville and Tarzan Tyler as he became, and
Yeah, that's it.
I think Johnny Rougeau and later on people like Rick Vigneault, Rick Martel and Michel Martel and Bob De La Sera, UFO, and Jacques Rougeau was Jimmy Rougeau back then, Neil the Hangman Gay, and so many others. So I sort of had a great affinity. We had so many of those guys. Even when I was a little kid, my dad had a lot of those old Bob Legs Langevin and some guy named Pat Curry and
I feel like Montreal is
Yvonne
like
Robert was out there, and these guys are all good buddies of my dad's. So, and there was a lot of interaction with some of those other old legends that were up there at that time, like George and Sandy Scott and the Miller brothers, Don Leo Jonathan, and Stan Stasiak was from Arvida, Quebec, I heard. And he originally wrestled up there under the name of Emil the Cat Coverley, and then he came back as Stan Stasiak, and and I know all those guys like on a regular basis. I'd see them, and there was an old guy who was booking talent then, and his name was Jack Britton, Gino's dad, and he used to send up the midgets, Sky and Little Beaver and Irish Jackie and Little Brutus and all like that.
Yeah.
I had a lot of the French Canadian girl wrestlers I knew that started. I didn't even know their names. My dad, but it was fascinating. And later on, I'd run into people like Luna, who nice kid. She had a few issues, unfortunately. But,
great talent.
She was a nice kid, and I knew so many of those people just informally were out of the ring and share perspectives, and sort of felt like I knew their families and all like that. So as I said, the wrestling business was like a big family back then, and a big part of it was the French Canadian.
I feel like Montreal is the home of the Hart too.
This is kind of cool for me because I think I wrestled the odd time in the forum and all, but I didn't really get a chance to spend any time here. And I used to hear of all these things from all the wrestlers who have been in Montreal and were out of there, and I was always like, man, that's cool, you know. You'd hear about them talking about Toe Blake and the Rocket and
Billy Woe, Jean Billy Woe.
and there seemed to be some affinity, I gather, from with the hockey. And I remember even later on when he was playing out in Calgary for a guy named Denny Gauthier, who was I think his dad was Denny Gauthier, and he was Joanne Rougeau's son, maybe.
You're right.
I had a few visits, and they all seemed like pretty good guys. I knew a lot of the Calgary hockey players because my brother Brett had started that.
The Hitmen.
Hitmen. And he was partners, as you guys probably know, with Joe Sakic.
Yeah, sure.
Theron Fleury and Tyler Wright, and unfortunately Sheldon Kennedy, and like that. So, nonetheless, I spent a lot of time talking with them, and they were, good buddies of a lot of the French Canadian players. And, So I sort of felt an affinity. Obviously, Montreal's like the Yankee Stadium of hockey.
True.
Yeah, back in the time,
Not anymore, but
Toe Blake and Scotty Bowman and all like that. So, well, a lot of interesting parallels there.
So we all know about the famous art dungeon back in Calgary.
Yeah.
So any memories about working out with your father and your brothers when you were younger?
I got zillions of them, from different eras and different stages of my life. When I was a little kid, obviously, I was too young to be stretched.
Yeah, for sure.
I went down there, and it was at that time I didn't have any preconception about wrestling being a work or any of that, but I would, and my brothers would see these quite often. They were big, powerful looking guys that looked pretty scary. Billy Graham Superstar, Wayne Coleman, or guys like that, Angela Mosca, and some of these big weightlifter, bodybuilder types like Paul Anderson and Kazmaier types and all. And back then, my dad was, pretty tough old bastard, and he had a bunch of cronies that would kind of come down there with him, and they were equally tough. A guy named George Goryenko, a black guy named Luther Lindsay. And I remember some of those other old farts were down there on occasion, like Carl Gotch, and Mad Dog was down there, and he tough guy too. And I would see these guys who looked like pretty
Jacked
like
up.
they might have big football players and weightlifters and stuff, and I would see them screaming and crying like little babies and stuff. And it was interesting to see. And later on, I spoke to my dad about what the point of all that was, and he told me it was about instilling respect, not only in the wrestling business, but instilling respect in themselves. That if they survived this, and a lot of them didn't, or a lot of them never came back. My dad said it was akin to paying some dues, and he felt it was obligatory to put these guys through that and see if they were worthy of being allowed into the fraternity, so to speak. And I think that was, as you guys probably know, that was kind of the norm in other territories back then too. I think Calgary was one of the more notorious, but
Yeah.
Vern Gagne's
Sure,
bunch
yeah.
in Minneapolis,
Yep.
they had, you know, some old pistols. Joe Pazendak and Dory Funk Sr. had a few down there that were
Yeah.
fairly tough old bastards. And I think Eddie Graham had a few down, like Carl Gotch and Hiro Matsuda. And
Yep.
I know when I went to England later on, I went out to the so-called Snake Pit at Wigan, and where Billy Robinson had come out, and same kind of thing, you know. And none of them were fancy. There was no, you know, nothing, there was not even ropes or anything in the dungeon or most of these other places.
Yep.
It was just a soiled old mat and a few blood-stained spots. And in retrospect, it served a good purpose. Remind me of some of those old boxing movies like Rocky or whatever the hell were. You know, you had to go down there and, you know, sink or swim wasn't no magic bullet or fuck all, you know, it was just, and I kind of grew up around that, and in retrospect, I think the wrestling business needs to revisit some of those things.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Back to the
I'm
roots.
not an advocate of the business, like just, I'm not an advocate or endorsing somebody just abusing people, but it's about instilling respect and in order to become good at something, you need to know how to simulate realism.
True.
There's too many guys, I hate to be critical of the modern generation, but too many that don't know how to wrestle or don't know how to, you know, make the crowd impressed or
Tell a
you know,
story,
take it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they need to get back to some of that. And I'm honestly not sure if they're capable of that. It's
It's a different beast.
Do
Up
you
in
still
the air.
watching wrestling?
What's
those
that?
days? Do you still watching wrestling those days?
Yeah, I don't like to sound like I'm always criticizing,
Yeah.
but they need to reestablish some semblance of legitimacy and respectability, regardless of whether people perceive it to be sports
Entertainment. Yeah.
bullshit entertainment
Yeah.
or wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly not sure if they're capable of that. You know, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
In order to do it, they got to go back to square one. They got to reestablish the wrestling. They got to reestablish some perception of quasi-legitimacy, regardless of what it is. And they need to, you know, start re-educating the fans.
Yeah.
And I've often said that the biggest indicator that fans are clamoring to take it seriously is the
Yeah.
rise of UFC,
Yeah. True.
which I'm not even that big a fan of, but
No.
at the very least they allow fans to indulge in the notion that it's a
real.
shoot,
Yeah.
even though it's maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Jury's set out on that one.
Or speculative conjecture that it isn't. But
Yeah.
So
I know.
Oh, was he?
I know you team up with Brian Pillman back at the time.
hell yeah, bad company. And
Yeah. And did you follow his son's career?
a little bit. I had his son up for a while,
Yeah.
Brian Jr.
Yep.
or-
Yeah.
He's a nice kid. Like I said, in general, one of the prevailing problems right now is there's not that many places out there which actually teach you
Yeah.
how to work and how to, you know, depict realism and all. And,
Yeah.
I had Brian up there for a while, and I haven't seen much. I've heard some not bad things about him, but to a degree, everybody is a product of their environment, and the prevailing environment right now is somewhat scorched earth. It's not that good.
Just flips.
Yeah.
It's all about people taking shortcuts, and I think the famous opera singer, I think her name was Beverly Sills, said there's no shortcuts to any place worth going to.
It's true.
And wrestling needs to recognize that, and you need to have a few Stu Hart, Vern Gagne, Leroy McGurk, Eddie Graham types to take the bull by the horns and say, hey, we're not going to spend time telling you what color to dye your hair and how many sequins to have in your robe and all this other shit. All we're going to do is spend some time, you know, on the mat, learning how to
Grapple.
And how to fucking give and take, and how to
Basics,
impress the marks who need to be impressed more than ever right now. There's so much justifiable cynicism. So
100%, yeah.
So you wrestle all over the world: Japan, England, US, Canada, of course. What is your favorite time wrestling ever?
I think my favorite time, quite honestly, was in Calgary in the early 80s. I'd had an opportunity to travel a bit, and I went to England, and I had been in Australia, and I had been in Hawaii, and by chance I kind of was given the book on short notice in Calgary. My dad I was in Hawaii, and my dad called me up and said that I remember he told me Keith and Brett were going to Japan for the summer, and they told him he should shut down for the summer and restart. And Stu called me up and what do you think? I said I think if you shut down for the summer, I don't think Helen, my mother, is going to let you reopen. She's looking to get out. And I said, you still have a few guys that are decent, including Dynamite, who was. So anyway, Stu says, would you be interested in taking the book? And I initially said, not really, but if that means you're shutting down, then I'll come up. And I didn't have much to work with. Dynamite was just coming back into the ring. He had torn his knee ligaments a few months before, and he was half hobbling, and didn't have much else, just kind of a skeleton crew. And but I shot some angle with Dynamite, and then this old fart from, I think he was from Atlanta or something. He just won some variation of the NWA junior heavyweight title, a guy named Dick Steinborn, and he said he'd be happy to drop the belt up in Calgary. So I had him come up and drop the belt, and initially I initially wanted them to put the belt on Dynamite, and Dynamite said to me, my knee's kind of bad, and I actually think it would be better if we put the belt on you, on me, because I'm a face and Steinborn was a heel.
Makes sense.
So I said, I just don't want everyone thinking that as soon as I got the book, I'm putting belts around my waist and all that. Dynamite was kind of adamant, and so we shot the angle and got an incredible pop. And I remember at the end of that match, my brother Owen, who was only about 14 at the time, he jumped in the ring to celebrate with me, and Dynamite ambushed him. I busted him open in the whole works, and crowd went nuts. And
Yeah.
we seemed to ignite the fuse, and we had the territory selling out every week for about the next several years. And also, one of the most satisfying things for me at that time was, up till that time, my dad used to kind of go out of his way to get some of these big names from the States to come up.
Yep.
All of a sudden, they had all these guys that were pretty highly regarded from the States asking if they could come up. David Schultz and guys like that.
Dr. D, yeah.
And ended up becoming a really vibrant territory, and so many of these guys that emerged from that era were like Dynamite, Davey, Brett, Jake Junkyard,
Junkyard Dog, yeah.
and Schultz and Honky Tonk, and that was, those guys all became huge
Star.
things in the business.
Yep.
So, I had a lot of fun. I was pretty innovative, and my dad always thought I was a bit radical, or like kind of a lunatic or something like that. But during that time, we introduced stuff like the triple threat match, which I originally called the Bermuda Triangle match.
Okay. Yeah.
The ladder matches and some of those other things. And I remember everyone was like skeptical anytime I ever advocated any of these things. And they had a few sarcastic names about, the genius, and always got another one of these. And I was always greatly, kind of satisfied and gratified that those things not only drew business, but later on down the road, Vince and other people are copying them and trying to claim that they started them and all
Exactly.
that. So,
That's what Vince does.
but yeah, those are some of the things that gave me a lot of intrinsic satisfaction back then.
So speaking of Vince, you were multiple times in WWF. I remember a match at Survivor Series with the Hart family against Shawn Michaels and his Knights. Because of things that are beyond Jerry Lawler's control, he couldn't be there. But
Yeah, I was almost amused with some of the. Almost everything I ever did with WWE was compromised and modified. And when I initially shot the angle to go down there for that, it was initially supposed to be with Jerry Lawler and Matt Bourne or Doink the Clown.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then we had already shot the angle, and then I'm not sure if Jerry got into some
Yeah, he had legal
trouble
troubles.
or some shit. And Matt did
Alleged
too,
rape.
and
Yeah.
ended up becoming, instead of the Hart family was still intact, but
Was
all
Sean?
of a sudden it was Barry Horowitz, who was mostly a jabroni,
Yeah.
Greg the Hammer.
Yeah.
I think Shawn Michaels was, and Terry Funk was supposed to be part of that.
I heard that story, yeah. That he,
And,
before the night. Yeah.
I was there that night in Hartford. I was actually, we were in Providence the night before, and then we had to have some kind of a bullshit luncheon or whatever at the hotel, and they ran the finish by Terry and all like that, and I'd see that Terry was not thrilled with it just by the look in his face. And I went up to my hotel room a bit later, and there's this laundry bag, white, one of those laundry bags on my door, and it's Terry Funk's night outfit. I can't remember if he was a red knight or the black knight or whatever.
It was supposed to be the Black Knight, I think.
Yeah. His bag, night outfit is in my, hanging on my door handle, and he says, "Tell Vince my horse got sick."
Yeah.
And I had to leave. And, which was his way of saying,
Yeah, I'm outta here.
That finish doesn't appeal to me. And that was funny. And initially that night I remember before I went down there, Vince had come up to me and said, I got something really big in mind and you're gonna love it and all like that. And then when they ran the finish by me, I kind of like, I've been a booker, I've been, I said, my dick's not getting that harder and not getting that fucking, I found out later that their initial intent was for me to become the Black Heart.
Oh yeah.
Which I have no doubt I could have done well. I had a pretty good mind for healing just from booking, and I was orchestrating all the dirty work for all the heels that are up in Calgary, and I had a pretty good handle on it and what you need to say and do. And
is it easier to be a heel against your own brother?
What's that?
Is it easier to be a heel against your own brother?
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And so I had mixed feelings about that whole thing because it was a lot of what could have and should have, but wasn't.
Yeah.
And it seemed to sum up in a lot of ways my overall career with WWE.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to extol my own virtues. But, I have no doubt that the things I was capable of and the mindset that I had would have been good for business. I had a lot of respect for people like Stone Cold and The Rock and on, but at the same time I was never in awe. I had orchestrated similar stuff in Calgary, and I had been the impetus behind so many of the guys that were huge successes down there, and I never felt at any time like I was like in awe or wow, hope I can, run with these guys. I'd already been there, done it, orchestrated all that other, and I have no doubt I could have been an enormous asset just with my grasp of it. And I think they need to have some guys who actually come in there and render divergent perspective and have the stones to say, I don't think so, Pat, or I don't think, I think you need to do this. I'm not that compelled to blow smoke up your sphincter. I'm more into, doing business, and it should still be like that,
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway.
So one of our personal favorites is Owen, of course.
What's that?
One of our personal favorites is Owen. We always loved Owen. One thing we know that he loved to do himself was doing some good pranks.
Yeah.
Anyone that comes to mind?
I remember, I can't remember if I told you guys this before, but I remember we were down there for, I think it was the Hall of Fame thing in Phoenix, whatever, and Stu was down there, and I remember there was going to be some kind of a function a bit later, and Stu was in his hotel room just getting ready to go down there, and as the phone rings in his hotel room, and it's supposedly this old wrestler named Reggie Parks, who was a nice guy, pretty mild-mannered guy, and Owen was great at doing impersonations and all like that, but anyway, Owen, as Reggie Parks goes, and he's stammering and sounding all nervous and all, and Owen was really good. It's Reggie Parks, Stu, and really, and Stu said, "Hey Reggie, what can I do for you?" Back in 1955, when I was just a rookie, and Stu saying, "Yeah, you had me down in the dungeon, and you took advantage of me, and I was just a young kid." And Stu's what are you getting at, Reg? And Owen said, you stretched me and, tortured me, and 40 years later, Stu, I'm going to see you on the banquet floor, and just you and me, and I've got some revenge to offer. And Stu said, are you challenging me, Reg? and Owen had spread, if that's what you want to call it, Stu. And I said, oh. And Stu says, that's fine, Reg, grab your best fucking hold. And so a few minutes later, they're down in the banquet room, and Reggie Parks, who hasn't seen Stu in about 40 years, comes up and, hi, Stu, grab your best fucking hold, Reg. And Reggie wasn't sure, he's like scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like one of the Owen
mini pranks.
Oh, he always did it very well too.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the SummerSlam 93 with a bucket of water?
Oh, I can remember. I remember they did one fucked up one on me, and I think it was in Detroit or wherever the hell. But
I think it was, yeah.
I'm not sure who was perpetrating this one, but they told me that somebody, Doink or Matt Bourne, was going to come up and throw a bucket of water on me, and I was supposed to. And I was told later that several of the WWE operatives had pissed in the bucket of water, and
Okay.
it's true, I was like more amused, like whatever, I don't really give a rat's ass if it's piss or
For
water.
sure.
I get my payday, whatever,
We watched the clip yesterday, so
We did, yeah, actually, yeah. Prepared for the podcast by watching old clips.
Yeah. But yeah, I've perpetrated. I've perpetrated so many ribs I maybe deserve to have a few pulled on me. I remember one time we had this misfit who was scared shitless of Pillman. Pillman, he was the guy who lined up the towns and all. Owen and I were always up to mischief, but we told this old fart. Initially, it was just a rib. We had this. Owen and I had overheard Brian hooked up with some stripper or something who was wanting to rendezvous with her after the matches, and we were in some farm town in the middle of nowhere, and initially just as a rib, I told this old fart who lined up the towns and all to come up to Pillman and say that he's got a say no to drugs speech at a senior citizens home after the matches. And then Owen came up, in a typical Owen fashion, and that's bullshit and all. They saying, why do they much of geriatrics need to be told about saying no to drugs? They're probably needing drugs. And
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, initially we had no intention of it at all.
Yeah.
But Pillman was so overreactive that we drove out after the matches about 11 at night to the seniors' home, and this old janitor's, I don't know nothing about it, and Owen starts heating up, and I start heating up and say, we didn't mention that we wrestled there that night or anything. We made out like we'd driven 600 miles from Calgary just to do this. You better get them up, and anyway, we dragged all these seniors. It took about half an hour for them to, get their dentures in, get out of bed, and all the other, and then Owen and I wound this old janitor up to be like the big MC, and he said, "Folks, we've got a real treat for you. He's a famous wrestler named Ryan Tillman," and he didn't get the name or anything, and he's got an important message for all of you. And Pillman got on there and gave the most half-hearted, and he says, "I know some of you are tempted to be taking crack and cocaine, I'm just here to say, just say no. And then he turns to this Bob Johnson and says, let's get the fuck out of here. And, in the meantime, Owen had this old caretaker.
Yeah.
He said, would you mind having, do you have anything to eat? And this old fart said, I think I've got some Sara Lee cake in the freezer. Owen used that as a pretext for stalling for another half hour.
Yeah.
And Pillman was getting more and more wound up with this Bob Johnson. Owen saying, why does Bob have us having to have coffee cake and fucking, and Pillman was getting madder and madder.
But I love Owen.
It's the
One
best.
of the best.
Yeah.
One of the best.
And then we finally got back to the town we were in, and Pillman thought he was going to have access to the van to go meet his hooker or stripper buddy or whatever. And Owen had this old fart Bob Johnson, the road agent, take off in the van. And then Pillman had to hitchhike in the rain and was steaming, missed his date with the girl. And I remember when I got back to the hotel and the motel, and there was this mangy old dog hanging around the parking lot, and Owen and I brought it into Pillman's room and dressed it up in Pillman's ring tights, and he had a tie-dye tank top.
Oh boy.
All like this. And we laid the dog in Pillman's bed and gave it some pizza crusts and all. And then on the way out of there, I saw this waste paper basket in the bathroom. I said, one more second. We put the waste paper basket, filled it full of water, and put it up on the top of the door.
Oh.
Wow.
Pillman came back, missed his date, was steaming, and
What a story.
he went to turn the lights on, and we'd screwed
What a
out all the
story,
light
Mike.
bulbs. So he kicked the door. This waste paper basket came down and hit him right in the head. Split his head open, and he was bleeding. So he started throwing a big tantrum,
Wow.
and the dog freaked out and attacked him.
Oh.
And he went running out and he smashed about 4 of these motel lights. And the next morning, my brother Ross, who was kind of like, he used to call him Principal Skinner, he was kind of like, and he gave Pillman a bill for about $100 for
Oh my
broken
God.
light bulbs, and admonished him, and he said, why were you, smashing lights and all? And Owen and I always laughed about Pillman. Very seriously said to him, a dog wearing a sports coat, he referred to it. Because I tried to attack me in my hotel room, and
Oh my
he
goodness.
said he flipped out, and Owen came up to Ross after and said, Brian was obviously stoned, why would a dog wearing a sports coat be trying to make sense of any of this? And Stu gave Brian shit. What was going on with you and that smashing the fucking hotel, and what was this horse shit about a dog wearing a sports coat and all that? But,
Oh my God.
but yeah, that's just one of the
I think it's
one
my
of
new
the
favorite story.
Yeah.
anecdotes or whatever. But
Wow.
So, yep. After that, you became a lead booker for Stampede Wrestling around the end of it. So you saw people like, of course, Natalia, David Hart Smith, Teddy Hart trained there.
oh yeah, I was even booking. I was in charge of all the matchmaking in the '80s for David Schultz, Bad News, Honky Tonk, Brett, all those guys, and then when we restarted, and would have been maybe the '90s, somewhere in there. I was training the guys in the dungeon, and then I was putting them in the ring, and some of them were Natalia at that time, and Rick Victor, and Tyson Kidd, and David Hart Smith, and quite a few of these little Japanese guys who
Okay.
became pretty successful. And I was initially given to believe that WWE was going to interact and sanction and work with us.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it always seemed like there was some kind of an impediment.
Yeah.
Right around that time, Owen got killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was all the lawsuits and
Yeah.
so everything ended up kind of
Fizzling out.
dissipating, which was too bad. And
Mm-hmm.
as I said before, WWE needs to they need to be reestablishing, territories and places that just places where guys need to work. I don't even think they necessarily need to be supposedly affiliated with WWE or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it would probably be better if they weren't. But you nonetheless have some people that actually know something about wrestling that are endeavoring to
Elevate.
get these rookies to learn about ring psychology and having a method to the madness and making it look real and, cutting back on the bullshit and reestablishing some elements of quasi-legitimacy. And that's one of the big things wrestling needs to do, and I'm not sure if it's capable of that. That's kind of why this initiative up here in Montreal might
Yep.
serve some good purpose, but I need to re-educate these guys.
True.
I need to reestablish, to use a football analogy, the run needs to set up the pass, the wrestling needs to set up the other.
Yep, exactly.
You need to do less but make it mean more.
Yeah.
You need to integrate the crowd and make them subliminally feel, even though they've been told it's a work and all, that they're cheering or they're booing or whatever
Just our emotion.
has some discernible impact on the outcome. That all sounds to me almost too simple or too logical, but it's something that has been lost in the translation in the last 20 or 30 years.
True.
It needs to be reestablished, and I hope you're listening to me, Vincent K.
Do it.
Fuck you.
No, and I'm not talking for my own good. I'm talking about preserving and perpetuating wrestling, pro wrestling, and easier said than done.
True.
And you got to, if you're gonna do a house clean, you need to clean your own effing nest before you're,
True.
doing it elsewhere.
Yeah.
I hope you're listening and taking what I say seriously, and it's not just from some embittered, pissed off ex whatever, somebody who cares about the business and would like to see it thrive and become bigger and better going into the future. And it's up to you, Vinny, and I hope you hear what I'm saying and take it at face value.
And in closing there, what would be the best piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to make it in the big leagues of professional wrestling these days?
Use a simple term: aim high and shoot straight. Set your goals high. In shooting straight, you need to work hard, put the effort in, invest in blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Don't take shortcuts.
Put in the work.
Go out there and feel proud about yourselves after, and feel proud about the industry that you're reviving. So go out there and kick some ass, guys, and good luck to all of you. I hope you guys become people we're talking with great pride and
Absolutely.
joy about in a year or two or 10 or whatever.
Yep.
What a podcast.
Yeah.
Wow, what a podcast.
Anything you want to add, Mark? Or
I want to thank you, Bruce, to come to
Well,
our
thanks.
podcast.
I hope I didn't talk too long.
No,
No, to give your time to us. It's a privilege, I think.
Yeah,
it's an honor.
An honor.
It's a privilege and honor.
I'm pleased. I take a lot of intrinsic pride in the wrestling business.
Yeah.
It's been my dad and my brother's legacy, and I hope that we've given
we'll
something
Oh.
to the fans, and
yeah, we'll do forever.
I'd
100%
like
sure.
to see the wrestling business
Yeah,
benefit from any of the things that we did and maybe we're
yeah.
advocating today, and I hope that this serves a good purpose. So thank you.
Yeah,
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah.